Hello, everyone. I'm going to let people join. Today, we are joined by the Emmy-nominated team from Unbelievable on Netflix. I hope all of you have watched it because it was excellent and at times very hard to watch, but that's a testament to the performances. And we're going to get into the show. We're going to talk a little bit of advice, how you guys work together. We'll cover a lot in the next hour or so. For those of you who have questions that have not submitted them already, we got some questions over email. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you put questions into the chat or you raise your hand, I will not see them. But I encourage you to use the chat to talk amongst yourselves. But again, if you have a question, use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them in a little bit. And while people are still kind of filing in, I'll let Kate, Melissa, and Jody introduce themselves a little bit. They're all here because they work together on Netflix's Unbelievable with Laura Rosenthal, who is not joining us today. But I'll let them kind of talk about some of the other projects they've worked on. I don't know who wants to go. Kate, you're at the top of my screen, but I don't know what the order is for everyone else.
Number one!
So I guess you can go first.
You're number one.
Hi, Kate Caldwell. You may remember me from such things as IMDb Pro, which you look me up, then you can see what I worked on. A lot of stuff you probably never heard of, a lot of stuff you probably did and didn't love, but I worked on some good stuff, so I'm kind of proud. So there you go. Melissa?
I'm Melissa Kostenbader, and Kate and I were partners in LA on this with Jody and Laura as a team in New York. And Jody.
I'm Jody Engstreich, and I've worked for Laura Rosenthal for we just hit our 10th anniversary.
Happy anniversary!
Big, exciting. And Laura says hello to everybody. She couldn't be here today, but we're based in New York and we work on fun things. And this was like a really special project. And we got to work with these two who we adore.
Yeah,
it was a love fest.
It was a huge working love fest.
Yeah.
I couldn't have asked for better people to work with ever, outside of Kate, but you know.
We like to hear that, but we're kind of representing, we usually have people join these webinars from all over the world. I saw Australia, Tokyo, you can kind of see people. But we're kind of covering the major time zones that Backstage covers right now. So that's a nice representation.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for watching.
UK represent.
Yeah, because Kate is in England right now. And yeah, so we're spread all over. So first, kind of going off of talking about working together, I think it's not super rare, but I think that some people might be surprised that there isn't just one casting team that always works together and only works amongst themselves to do a single project. So can you talk a little bit about how it came to be that these two teams working together and how you work together on this project?
So this was kind of a unique project for a lot of reasons, but specifically location-wise, usually if a project is going to be shooting in Los Angeles, Laura Rosenthal will normally be like, you should hire an LA casting director and let them just take it away. This one, we didn't do that for a lot of reasons. Number one was Laura's got a long-term relationship with Lisa Cholodenko, who is the director of many of the episodes, and we would never ever say no to Lisa. Number two is we fell in love with it. And we have done it before where if it's shooting in LA, we just have to find the right partners in order to be able to cover both coasts. And we all sort of worked collaboratively on those who could come from anywhere. And then those that needed to be from LA, Melissa and Kate kind of, were the leaders from that, world. So we had a big search for Marie that we all worked on together. Getting Tony and Merritt was a group effort, but those were not actors who auditioned. Those were lists and thoughts and offers. And a lot of the other parts were both coasts. And then we had the day player roles, which there were quite a few of. Melissa and Kate sort of handled on their own. So, and we found each other through the amazing Meg Lieberman, who's our CBS executive.
Love Meg.
She was our matchmaker.
What a matchmaker she is too. No one can say anything bad about her. Yeah, it was exactly like Jody said, and it was really collaborative, and they were such great partners, and it was just such an open communication, which, you know, it isn't always, depending on who you're working with. And I just feel like we all kind of fell into a very easy dialogue, and we all have very similar tastes, which was really important. But yeah, it was a big cast. So.
And I've been on New York casting ends of things where there's an LA lead, and then, you know, we're the New York end of it. And the communication I've learned is like so key. There are so many times before working for Laura that I've been on projects that you find out, like, you're in auditions and you find out that somebody's been cast that you didn't even know that they were thinking about, and things like that. And so I think whenever we are partnering with casting directors in another location, I think it's so important that we're all talking. I mean, we talked numerous times per day, but certainly it was like a large part of like, hey, this is what is going on. I had this conversation with the team, you had this conversation with the team, this is where we're all thinking.
Yeah. So it's really, you're both there, you got all bases covered across the country. And going back to, you said you did a big search for Marie, and Caitlin Deaver, if you look at her IMDb, like, she's been working for forever. So I don't think, it's not super obvious that she, you know, might not have, you could have assumed that she could have been an offer. So can you talk a little bit more about that search and the audition process and some of the challenges of having, you know, such a heavy part fall on a young actor that is basically, you know, has to handle a lot of these scenes on her own?
Yeah, well, Caitlin obviously is more than amazing, and we were so lucky to get her that she responded to it. So because she was just perfect, and she was somebody that we'd all talked about. And you know, Sarah Timberman, they had worked in, you know, Katie Demento, they had worked with her on Justified, and so she was kind of she's known, you know. And so when we were doing a big search like that, especially for that age group, you really have to look and turn over all the stones, because there's a lot of talent out there, especially in that age group, that just hasn't quite clicked over into everyone's kind of like immediate forefront of their minds. So while we were talking about Caitlin and some other actresses that you would know, we auditioned lots and lots and lots and lots of girls to just make sure that we had seen everybody, because it is such a difficult role. And we saw tons of great tons and tons and tons of great actresses, but this role is really specific, and we were really looking for a real girl. And there were so many layers to Marie. I mean, she had to be childlike but mature and vulnerable and kind of out of control at times, and to tick all of those boxes was really what the biggest challenge was, because we, like I said, we saw tons of great actresses, but getting all of those boxes ticked was what was a little tough. And then Caitlin obviously just nailed it. So we were so lucky that she was willing to come in. And for roles like that are really difficult, some actresses are willing to read, you know, like, you sometimes need to see it, or sometimes your creatives just need to see it to make sure that everything that they need from them can be encompassed into their creative vision for the show. So we were really lucky she was willing to do that. And then obviously she knocked it out of the park. So
Caitlin should have honestly been nominated for an Emmy for her Justified performance. Like, hands down, she should have been nominated that year. So she's always going to be on everybody's lists. Like, every casting director loves her. I've never heard anybody not love her. She belongs on all lists, and she will win an Emmy and probably an Oscar and hopefully a Tony someday. Like, I want her to be an EGOT. She should be. Yeah, you name it. A BAFTA. I'm waiting for the English accent.
Yeah, no one's worried about Caitlin winning everything ever, because she's going to get all of the things. Yeah, she's definitely going to.
And we did have, you know, like Melissa said, we had so many great actors audition for the part. I don't want actors out there to think that, like, oh, it was always going to be Caitlin. Like, we definitely had Caitlin in, you know, like on our lists and all of that. But we had 2 actors from New York test fly out to LA to meet the team. We had other actors in LA who were, you know, were finalists, I guess you would say. And Caitlin nailed it. And those were really, really, really hard auditions too. And the actors definitely did.
Yeah. And they're, just to say again, kind of what we're just talking about, is a lot of actors are really great for these roles. You know, they're really great actors, and just because it's just a perfect example of just someone can be very, very good, and it's just not their time for it. You know, it doesn't make them any less great of an actor, less capable in any way. It just, you know, has to fit and exactly right.
And when you say, I mean, I imagine when you say it's a hard audition, the material is very difficult, I'm sure, to perform, because it's also difficult to watch. So when you do have this search for a young actor, I'm sure there's a lot of actors that you maybe saw that don't have, you know, years and years of experience on their resume. So how do you kind of format an audition so that you can kind of give the best snapshot of the fact that this person can handle the role, when, you know, you can't know for sure, and you only have a few minutes with them or maybe a couple of callbacks, but what's the best way, or like what can an actor expect from a project like this when there's a lot of different layers, like you were saying, to the character, and they have to show that they can play all of them in this very consolidated format?
Our sides were pretty intense. You know, and they weren't short. So I think that you can tell in a short period of time if someone can handle it. That doesn't mean that they're not going to like completely break down on set one day, but like you can tell. I will say our waiting rooms were a quieter place for this project than normal. And I wonder how it would be auditioning in current days. Would it be easier or harder via Zoom in this world? But I definitely, you know, we had, we put them through it a little bit. Not that we did anything in the rooms that were putting them through it, but they had sides that were intense. And we had to go there pretty much. I do remember working with actors, and you guys tell me if you feel differently, but I remember working with actors specifically. One of the challenges was we were only allowed to release the first script.
Yeah.
And a lot of actors didn't know that she actually was raped. Like there definitely were people who thought that she was lying.
Which changes the performance completely.
Yeah. So I remember working with that, or shocking some actors, and I was like, no, she actually was raped. And that would throw them a little bit. But
that's another whole reason of, you know, just speaking of the challenges that we're facing. I mean, self-tapes are something that everyone's been using for years and years now, but to kind of predominantly be having to use self-tapes right now, some people come in and they, you know, have limited information. Luckily, they were able to read the whole first episode, you know, but they come in with limited information, so they don't know all the subtext and the context, and they make a choice, which is exactly what you should do. And sometimes it's wrong, you know, and so if we're in the room, we can be like, okay, see what you did there, well done, but it's actually kind of more in this vein, and you know, you can easily kind of turn that around. I mean, you can still have people retape and stuff, but it does add that extra element.
And can I just side note for a second, and this particular project, not knowing for sure if she was raped or not, it was based on a true story. It was Googleable. So, I mean, I totally get it. There's a lot, you actors, it was probably, what time of year was it? I'm sure it was busy. It's always busy. And maybe you didn't have time to really dig that deep. But if it's something you really, really want, one Google search isn't going to kill you.
No Google ever killed anybody, right?
Not yet.
Well, that also brings up, someone did ask about what is it like, what changes or what challenges come up when you are casting based on something that really happened. I know that there were some departures from the, like, it's not a documentary, but how did that factor into the casting process, and how does that affect actors?
Well, the ladies were very specific about what they were looking for. Like, they wanted to be as true as they could. And therefore, a lot of the, like, even smaller parts, even like, say, the people who worked at the police stations, there were, 3 different police stations in reality. And they looked at the stats for those police stations. How many people worked there? What were the, ethnic background and everything? Because they wanted to make sure that it wasn't so glaringly Hollywood or something, like you're just trying to put a square peg into a round hole. And I think that went all the way up. I mean, we cast a wide net and, put as much in as we could where it could happen. But like, the 2 leads, they were, she was white, and then Tony and Merritt were white. And that just had to be, but like it was really wonderful when it came to the victims, because the most important part of the victims was that he had no pattern. And I think giving all of us the freedom to just look at every type of woman there is and bring them every type of woman there is. And we brought them so many different faces and types, and, big women, small women. It was amazing. And they really responded to that. That's what they wanted. They didn't want some, cookie cutter person, and they didn't want them all to be alike. They wanted it to show that this guy didn't have a pattern. And I think that's what resonated a lot from what I have seen from people emailing me after they saw it. So many women emailed me to say, like, it helped me so much to explain to, like, my boyfriend when I had been raped, and I'm not beautiful, but it happens to us all. And it was a very interesting thing to see, Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's interesting to understand, especially from an actor's perspective, when it's based on reality, when it's a story that's based on reality, and there are, I guess every story that's based on reality has a different goal, or different specifications. But when you're trying to represent the events kind of as they happen, then there are, there's certain things that an actor can't help, that it's, they could give a great performance, but it doesn't necessarily, but because of the assignment that you're given, they might not be a fit for that project.
But also too, when you're working on something that's real, from real life, there's kind of 2 versions you have to grapple with. There's the version of trying to cast someone that looks very much like the real person, which is sometimes very important. It was a little less important in this case. But also the real thing is trying to kind of find the essence of the person is more important a lot of the times, and their acting ability, than to find an actual physical direct match. Because then you get the real person kind of coming out. That's a lot more difficult to kind of like drive into than just being like, oh, they look alike, but they act completely different. And then that would, it kind of throws you in a different way. But
yeah, that's understandable. There's a 2-pronged approach, and you have to do the work, acting and energy wise, and understanding the character you can't just ride on the looks alone.
I think we've all seen examples where that was less than successful.
We don't need to name names, but yes, I'm sure that we can all come bring things to mind. Okay, and I also want to talk about, a few of you have made a few references to how things are happening right now and how it's different because things have moved to completely be on tape. And I have been enjoying talking to casting directors because I think everyone has had a different experience during these last few months. Some people have continued to cast things that were already casting. Some people have dropped off and then picked back up. Some people have kind of taken a break. So I'm curious to know what it's been like for you, and if you have been casting, a little bit about what that has looked like for you.
Jody, I think you're working on something right now. You want to jump in?
Yeah. So I'm on a show that started in the before times, as we say. And we did a couple of weeks on it at the beginning of COVID from home, and then we halted in April. So we were actually on it a little bit later than most people. And then we started up again a little bit earlier than most people too, which is great. So we've been on it for about a month, and I will say that it's very, very hard. I find it very, very difficult. We are doing more virtual auditions as opposed to self-tapes. We've been trying all the different formats, and so far Zoom is the best, because we find that it takes long. Part of our job is direction as a casting director, and we have found that giving direction after getting a self-tape and having them retape, it's just not that efficient. And also maybe we are discounting somebody's audition when really they don't have the context, or they don't, sometimes it's not just about, it was a good tape, bad tape. But within that, we now have a new problem with sometimes internet connections are bad. And you don't expect it. And like a lot of times actors are like, normally my internet connection's great, and then all of a sudden something happens. I had the internet in my building go off for a few hours. Like there's just like a lot more. There's always been technical issues live too, but I feel like this is a lot more frequent. So we're definitely learning and balancing, and I think we're probably going to do more self-tapes for some of the smaller parts, and then the bigger parts get more virtual, and we're learning as we go. But I definitely think it's tricky.
Yeah, it's same. Like I echo Jody. Sometimes self-tapes are great, but when you are really looking for a role and you're not seeing people in person anywhere and it's all happening virtually, there really is a huge delay of turnover trying to get people to retape. Because usually when you're seeing people in person and you're self-taping people, sometimes some self-tapes are like, oh, let's have those 10 people retape and it's easy. But then when you've got 30 and you're like, it just becomes this kind of bigger animal that you have to kind of tackle and wait for, and then it's like a whole other round, it's just so yeah, same. It's just it's tricky, and the callbacks with like producers and directors and Zoom and the internet connection, some are good, some are bad. Sometimes like today we're all pretty good and you can kind of talk over each other naturally and it's not stopping or hiccuping. But sometimes if you have really bad internet, if someone talks, it mutes out. I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced this, but it makes it difficult if you're trying to read with someone and they are muted and you're trying to talk, and it's so much less natural flow, and it just, everyone knows, and auditions are kind of awkward and hard anyway. And so when you add in this extra element of, but you're talking, I'm not trying to talk, and it just gets it's tough. But anyway, working all through it. I'm glad that there's now, I kind of feel like this happened in the best possible time when we do have Zoom, we do have, we audition, and Breakdown I know is getting something together, and I think it's at least we have these tools now that can kind of help us a lot more than if we were 5-10 years ago and we're just like, well, no more,
Hollywood's closed. No more.
Yeah.
I was on a Zoom last night for an hour and a half with 3 other casting directors, all talking about the Zoom thing, about auditions and stuff. It was really interesting. One of them is having her first big session today or tomorrow, I think. And we were all like, okay, so we're going to take this up next week when you're free, so you can tell us all how it went, tell us the pros and cons. Like, this is a time when casting people are generally, I think, pretty good to each other. But this is when we have to be the best to each other, because we need each other's help, we need each other's advice, and we have our own little groups on Facebook and other things, and we talk, and everybody's being so open and helpful with the technology conversations, which is really good, because yeah, we're all learning it together, and we need the best, because this is the way that it's heading. It's the way it's been. I mean, it's been heading this way for a while, guys. It has.
Yeah, it really has. And this was just the COVID pandemic. It was just like kind of a little click over, but yeah.
I hope we do go back to live though one day.
Same.
Yeah.
I miss seeing everyone's faces and getting to talk. But
yeah, I think that there's, like you were saying, there's almost, you can get used to it and you can sort of master it in the ways that you understand what works and what doesn't, but there's still kind of no replacement for the immediacy of being able to give a direction in the room and there's, when there's 2 internet connections and there's 2, environments that the people have to individually control. There's a lot less that can interrupt or distract when you're in the room together on the same Wi-Fi.
And shout out to the actors with dogs, because mine likes to bark at like inopportune times.
There's a lot of pros and cons to both self-taping and pre-reading. I mean, there just is anyway, like I completely understand that a lot of people don't want to drive all the way across town in 100-degree heat and find parking and wait for 15-20 minutes and then like get in there and then it's awkward and who knows, and then whatever, but in self-taping you can take your time a little bit, get where you feel good, but then you don't have the dread. Like there's just so many pros and cons to all of it that I'm hoping that when we all come out of this, we'll be able to kind of like mush all that together and find something that works really well for everybody. Yeah.
And Jody, because you're one of the first people that I've talked to that really has been like, okay, we found a way that seems to be the most successful right now, and it in that way is doing the like live Zoom sessions from your, it's all limited right now because we haven't been doing it for that long, but is there any like initial, these things work, these things don't work, these are something that you wouldn't have thought about when you go into a Zoom audition, but we found that it happens, like any of those like tips or anything?
I think that the number one thing that I think most actors learn pretty quickly is, like, if they've done one Zoom audition, they figure this out pretty quickly, is to pin the reader on their Zoom. So all they're looking at is whoever it is that's reading with them. And we do the same and pin them for recording purposes, but also so that there's not distractions, especially if there are producers in the room, or we've been trying to have, we had our first like real producer session yesterday, and we turned off our videos and just had the person reading and the actor. So there's like a little bit less stress or distraction of that vibe. That also helps with eyeline, which is like a whole other issue. And I think that it does actually work to look at the reader as opposed to be looking at the camera. And nothing's perfect, but I find that helps. And I've heard from other casting people that they've been having actors record themselves separately as like a backup in case something does go wrong. We haven't done that yet, probably should. But I wouldn't be surprised you know, as actors to know that that is probably going to become the norm, to be recording yourselves.
Yeah, understandable. And I think I've seen a lot of questions about, well, eyeline you just answered, but also readers, especially I think now maybe in some places there's a little bit more flexibility about if you do need to be in the same room with someone, but it's good to know that you can use a reader on Zoom and that's okay for you as the casting director.
We're sort of learning to accept what's, you know, what works, you know, so we're definitely telling our creative teams that you have to be more flexible. I know in commercials, it's really hard to get people to be flexible. And that's like a whole nother beast. But with so far, we've only really done TV. We're able to talk to our creatives a little bit and be like, it's just not the way it used to be.
And with stuff like eyeline, guys, like that's a very acceptable question to ask, you know, like if you know, if you're not already told in your audition notes or whatever where to look or who to read with or whatever. And I know some people too, like I have friends who are casting directors who will ask if they have someone that they live with that they want to be their reader, that's fine too. Or if they need them to provide a reader on Zoom, they'll do that. But ask where they want you to look, you know, because everyone's going to probably have a different opinion per usual. So just be, should I look into camera? Should I look off camera? Like, just ask, no problem.
Yeah, I do think that these are especially weird times outside of the weird times that are making it weird for casting, because both sides are sort of figuring out how it's working. So it's like every day might be different because you might learn something one day and then, you know, builds on it for the next.
And at the end of the day, the casting directors and the producer, everybody wants the tape, like whatever video is coming off of the Zoom or whatever, to look good and feel effective. So if you're not sure, don't, you know, have it be at the behest of your performance. Like just ask the technical questions, or before, ask your agent to ask them, or if they're not provided for you already. But I know a lot of people, a lot of casting directors are actually really specific in their audition notes, like really, really specific. So if you have a question, ask your agent if maybe they got that question already and they didn't necessarily pass it along, but they'll usually tell you, you know, so you know, we want it to look good too. So if you're not sure how to make it look good, ask.
Yeah. I guess that saves everyone a lot of time. And when it comes to self-tapes, you were saying before things had been moving in that direction for a while, and you just talked about how you did a big search, even though you were a bi-coastal team. I'm sure that you were calling in tapes for Unbelievable. So when you are doing a search like that, especially if it's a young actor, and maybe you want to go outside of the normal agents you ask, or the assignment calls for something that's maybe not as traditional, where have you looked, and where do you like to look for new faces, for young actors? Like, where are some places that you've found people?
I just did a search for kids during COVID, for like tweens. And I think depending on, it really kind of varies, you know, if you're looking for an adult, that's a specific thing, or a kid, like whatever the specificity is, it kind of depends. But we use Breakdown, we use Actors Access depending on it. Sometimes, like I just had to do a global search and I used eTalenta and I used Showcast and I used, what's the other one? Spotlight, yeah, thank you. Spotlight, you know, and they're really helpful. And then sometimes you just, Kate's friend Google, you know, like you just get on there and start looking. Sometimes very rarely does things turn up for us off of Instagram or YouTube or whatever, but you look there, especially for like kids, because it's just another resource, you know, like the idea is that we're here to look and we're here to find, and however we can do that is kind of how we do it, you know? So you put somebody on it and you just try searching and sometimes you find really interesting people.
Mm-hmm. So, you call schools, you call acting coaches in other cities all around the world, you call, you know, acting schools, you call regular schools, anybody. You see, do you have anybody that fits this that might want to audition? If they're not here, if they might want to self-tape, you know, if they have questions, let me know, you know, you just, You cast that net as far wide as you possibly can.
You're looking for basketball players, you call basketball leagues and schools and camps, and it's just, you just have to kind of get creative where whatever that specific thing that you're looking for is. But just in terms of general, we're all pretty good about, one of my favorite things to do is keeping tabs on new people. So when there's festivals, you just like the cool movies and you see who's in there, like who's got a great face and who even if they were small, like where did they come from, and can you think of that, because all of us cast things that shoot all over the place, you know what I mean? So maybe there's a cool face that you saw someone that shot in Oregon and you're like, oh, we're shooting in Oregon, that guy's face was awesome, like where is he, so it's just about all of that. I just saw somebody pop up about, what about IMDb? Yes, IMDb.
Yes, IMDb, absolutely. And I'm in England, so I watch a lot of English television. If I find anybody interesting, I'll always email Melissa and some of my other friends and just say, this person, had like 4 lines, but wow, or somebody at the theater, if you theater in the West End or local theater here in Bristol, because Bristol has amazing local theater. Like I keep tabs on those guys all the time, hoping that something will come up and we can I'd love to see what they can do,
And now, pandemic-wise, theater obviously not existent, but a lot of people have been doing a lot of readings online and a lot of, I highly encourage creating your own work because that's what you have to do, especially now. And I know a lot of like the theater actors who I know and love are creating these little virtual things that I, find as much time as I can to be like combing through and seeing, what's going on.
There's a great theater company in LA. I always say it wrong, Kay, is it
IAMA.
And, but they're a relatively small theater company in LA, and they're fantastic. They put on the best plays, and they did a Zoom play, and it was kind of like reading subtitles. Like once you start reading subtitles, you reading them for the first 5-10 minutes, and then you forget that they're there. It was kind of like that. So once you got past the fact that you're watching it on Zoom, you just got to ignore that and just really enjoy the performances and the story. But just go find stuff online. There's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah, because there have been some questions. I know that people like to reach out to casting directors when they have a showcase, or when maybe, especially in LA, if they're doing or I guess also in New York, when they're doing a play at a small theater, they want people to see what they're doing. And now that's not necessarily not an option, but the options are a little bit different. So I think people feel a little bit paralyzed in what can I reach out? How should I communicate with people? How can I network? So your suggestion, get involved, make your own work.
Create your own content.
I think it's tricky to like, how do you get the casting directors to know about it? I mean, I feel like that's always sort of been a tricky thing. Everybody's different, all casting directors are different about what they like, and social media, and like I'm very much like Instagram is just for my like friends and family, and but like occasionally I'll do a Twitter thing, and Twitter's more open to the world, but that's just me. Everybody's going to feel differently. I know other people love Facebook, so I think it doesn't hurt to publicize things however you would normally publicize it. And then hopefully it'll get to casting, and you can certainly target those who have active Twitter accounts that do reach out to actors. If they wanted to be private, they would be. And
don't forget casting assistants and casting associates. They are our lifeline. We listen to them. We really do, because they are more tuned in to that than we are. We're so focused on this one thing here, and we need them. And so you should definitely know your casting assistants and your associates, because they are a very good resource for you as well. They should be seeing it, because they'll send the good stuff on. I always did when I was an assistant and an associate, always.
And you divide and conquer. There's so much stuff out there that sometimes it's like the assistant watches or sees the one thing, the associate and the cat, and then you all talk about it. You don't have to all see exactly the same stuff, because there's just so much out there. And in terms of, if you guys have agents, you can have your agents write us and be like, I'm in this play, here's the card, or whatever those things are called. But you know, it's just your agents can reach out too. They reach out to me all the time. Like, my client's doing a stand up at this. Like, do you want to come? I'll comp you tickets. And sometimes I feel like seeing comedy that night, and I would love to go. You know, it's just another tool. But just use your agents. Ask them to do stuff like that. You know, and I know some of them are a little more receptive than others, but it's, you know, you have to. It's your career at the end of the day. So.
Yeah, I saw someone had a question about that they were cast in something, and they were like, oh, it's my first project and I want someone to know that I'm in it, but it's a weird time because they're not holding screenings, you know. It's like it's just it's just kind of like the casting sessions. People have to learn what the new version of inviting a casting director to a screening of something would be, because I guess there are digital screenings that are happening now, but it's just not going to be, there are going to be new avenues for a while that you have to figure out how to get things in front of people, whether it's a casting director or an agent or anyone else.
Yeah, that's always a tough question. I mean, honestly, it's hard. You know, I'll just be honest, you know, postcards to me, I don't get that personally, because I just feel like so many times, I feel like the amount of money you're probably spending on those to the effectiveness to me is just off. And I always hate the idea of actors especially spending so much money on something that's not necessarily going to turn out to be anything, you know. And a lot of times postcards just go unseen, you know, like it's just, or they don't make it in the mail right, or like the postmaster like put the thing right across the important part of your face. Like it just, you know, like there's so many things that go on with these postcards. But I do wish there was kind of like an easier way to be proactive. But I just think it's about being creative and using what you think will get the best return, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, and then kind of more generally, because we do have a lot of people who are in the early stages of their career or just trying to get started and sort of just want some kind of direction. So as casting directors, you don't need to step in the shoes of every single person that might give them advice. But as casting directors, for someone starting out, or maybe someone who doesn't have a ton of audition experience and is really nervous about getting in the room once we can get into rooms again, or I guess, you know, putting themselves on tape, what advice do you like to give actors? Like, what are some of your go-to things that you really want actors to know?
Classes.
Mm-hmm.
Like just
yeah.
And there are a lot of virtual classes happening. Like if you guys are trying to come up with something proactive to do right now while there's limited work, like look into some things. Obviously money is tight for a lot of people right now too, but
sure. Or like just the idea is like practice with your friends. The idea is that it's you know, your brain is a muscle like anything else. You got to keep it active. You got to keep it ready. So like if you're not acting for a while and you're not putting yourself in that actor mentality or trying to develop a character, it's that much harder to get into it if your draw isn't right there because you haven't been working that muscle. So practice with friends, like learn monologues, put stuff on YouTube, like Kate was saying, enjoy, like create your own content, like just keep that creative muscle going. But I think classes are great. And I think actors from every level go from like actors that, you know, that star in movies take classes and workshops and learn things and keep it growing, because you know, the truth is just what you were saying, you know, if you're nervous, if you're starting out, like these are the things that will help you get past that in terms of performance. And then when you come in for somebody like a casting director or whomever, an agent, even if you're not exactly right for what they're looking for, if you're good, we remember you.
Yeah, we pin you. We got lots of files, lots of things that we always look at.
Yeah, like, and for future things, like oh, remember that girl who was so awesome and she wasn't right, but remember how awesome she was? And if I don't remember your name, like I will comb and I will go back and I will find you and I will bring you, you know, but it's just, but you want to be as ready as you can be for when you do get in front of someone so that they do remember you, you know? And again, it's not about doing anything dramatically notice me, but it's just being really good and making good choices, and that will get you remembered, you know?
I'm actually really sad with everything that went down with workshops, because I think that workshops were very beneficial if the actor was using it for the right reason, and the casting person was doing it for the right reason. That's the thing. I feel like there should have been some sort of a course you had to take to teach a workshop, and then you should have been constantly audited to make sure that you were doing it right, because I loved workshops for the most part. When I got actors who came in and really wanted to do it, I loved it. I loved telling them how it worked in my office. And I worked at a lot of different offices, and I could tell them it's different at every office. You're never going to get the same answer from the same casting person ever. And it sucks. And I'm sorry, but there's nothing we can do about it. Everybody's different. But also, I feel like it gave me a chance to get to know them as people, and then to see them read and redirect and then read again. And I kept so many pictures, and I hired so many people. Like we definitely hired a few for sure on Unbelievable. So it's sad that it went down that way, but I agree you shouldn't have to pay for an audition. That's not what I don't think that's what I was doing at all. And I don't think a lot of people I knew were doing it that way. They were treating it as a class. We want to teach you. We want you to ask questions. So that's where classes come in. Like, you can't do workshops anymore. Classes. They are so helpful. And
we're
a lot of
here in New York. So, and now they're virtual. So you can take a workshop from wherever, because I know that I haven't done a virtual one, but I know that other casting directors are doing them. And if you're doing it for the right reason, and that's to learn, and, you know, hone some audition skills, I think, then I agree with Kate.
And there's so many resources out there, so many. I mean, like, if you have any questions, ask all of your friends. I'm sure you guys have actor friends. Ask whoever you can ask. Look in the books. Google what happened 20 years ago with that question. Google what happens now. You know, like, there's so many different, like, just educate, like, take it upon yourself to educate yourself the best that you can, because I honestly feel like it's so hard. And I know that when you're starting out, you just feel like, I want to do this, and it's overwhelming, all of the information. But at the end of the day, this is your job, and you should wake up every morning at whatever time you wake up, but, like, treat it like a job. Like, wake up at 10, get on the internet, educate yourself, because I do feel like a lot of times I encounter people who just have all these questions but have done zero investigating on their own to find them. And so you can't wait for someone else to tell you this stuff, or you can't feel like you're not getting the information you want to get just because you don't have access to a casting director directly or whatever, you know, like, it's out there, you know, if you look for it and you are making a real effort to find it, it's there, you know, you just have to get in there and treat it like your job.
Yeah, I think that I've seen some questions, people get really caught up in getting the right type of training, or they think that casting directors are so concerned with a certain school or a certain teacher or studio or whatever being on the resume, but that's not the case, right?
No. I think that's really, I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm not. I know, because I've heard it from too many people. I think that's more of an English thing. Like, I think England's more concerned with RADA and all that, but in America, nah, we just want you to have training. Like, if at all humanly possible, we would much rather hire an actor who trains than a YouTube personality. I mean, we want people who really, you know, are searching for their truths and everything. And it's our acting is so hard. It's so hard. You have to go so deep. And one line is the hardest thing in the world to act and the hardest thing in the world to cast. So, you know, you need practice. So that's why it's great to work with your friends, and if you don't have the money for a class. But if you do have the money for a class, just, you know, audit classes and find the best teacher for you, not the best teacher that everybody on the internet is saying. Like, just because some celebrity might have come from some certain acting coach, that doesn't mean that the acting coach is good for you, you know? So audit, find the one that's right for you, who teaches the style that you can respond to.
Yeah. And don't spend money when you don't have to spend money. There's so much free stuff out there, and free opportunities and access, and just get creative. Like Kate said, we just want someone to be trained and good, so that they know how to shift and take direction, and you feel comfortable putting somebody on a set that, you know, will be able to take notes if for some reason the character changes last minute or that's not working or whatever, you know.
Yeah, and then on the other side of things, we have a few questions about people who are interested in getting into casting. So if someone is interested in that, what are your recommendations for like meeting people, getting into it? What's your advice?
Well,
CSA has a program now. Yeah. Melissa, you know more about it than I do, but yeah.
No, it does, they do. And, you know, I would say before you, because I think you have to pay for that, but you go through classes and they kind of teach you because of the whole whatever went down with interning, which also makes me very sad. So if you're in college and you're interested in casting, a lot of casting directors will take on interns for college credit, but you have to get college credit. And that's the way I came up, was interning. And but anyway, CSA does have a class you can take, which is really cool of them to offer. But yeah, interning. And if you have, like, you know, very rarely casting directors need assistants that don't have experience, you know, but sometimes it works out that way. But if you create yourself like a good resume and look up what casting assistants do and what they're responsible for. And I would tailor your resume to those types of things, so that if I'm really desperate for like another assistant and I need someone to come and answer phones and just be a sponge, if you look like you're professional and you're enthusiastic and you know how to create a resume and spell words, like I mean, we get funny things. So, but you know, like if you look capable and enthusiastic and professional, like I am more willing to take a chance hiring you, you know, for like an additional assistant. And that's just the kind of way you got to get into it. But again, read everything on the internet. There is so much about casting directors and process and like learn actors, watch movies, track of who you like, you know.
Pay attention to credits. Look at IMDb while you're watching things and pay attention to who everybody is. I love on Amazon Prime when you pause.
Yeah, that's the best thing ever. I don't know why everything doesn't have that now.
Can we not do that with everything?
Can we not do that with? I'm on Hulu and I'm pausing. I'm like, it's not Amazon.
Damn, Hulu.
Hulu, no. But yeah, best creation.
Learn who people are, and they don't have to be famous for you to learn who they are. Like, that's not what casting is. Like, you need to know all the actors. So pay attention, and definitely attention to detail is so important in casting. And make sure you don't have any typos in your resume, and learn Zoom. Learn the ins and outs.
Jody's like, please learn.
learn about technology. I don't know if there's other, know how to.
Yeah, IT skills aren't bad.
Yeah, that's something that 6 months ago, 8 months ago was not necessarily going to be a standout on the resume, and now
I will say I am such a Luddite that is alwaast something I try to make sure to hire someone with, because you know, we always do a lot of camera work and uploading and working with Candid or EcoCat. You know, there's a lot of technology that is integrated in a good way into casting over the past like 10, 15 years. And anyone that knows about that, which I'm sure the upcoming crop does, because that's all.
The problem is that you probably did know it all, but once you get to like a casting director, you forget it all because you have people better than you at it, and you give it to them, and then things change and suddenly you don't know how to do it anymore. It's terrible. I was the IT person of every job I ever had, and then suddenly I had Muffet Brinkman as my associate, and I didn't have to do anything ever again because she was so amazing. And now I'm like, where's the keyboard? You know, it's just embarrassing.
It is a skill you have to keep up. I will say now that we're virtual, and I do think that virtual casting is going to be going on for a bit. Organization has become like a whole new thing as we're all spread out and we're working from home, and my associate's not near my assistant, and Laura's constantly like, I've got all these dial-in numbers and I don't know like which call is which dial-in number. And so if you have like great organizational skills, I think that's a huge plus in virtual assistant land. I mean, it's a good plus for non-virtual assistant land too, but it's certainly helpful.
And this also should go without saying, but especially in casting, you'll find that your lovely and helpful personality goes a long way, because most of the time when you're in an office, or maybe even more so now that we're virtual, and it's frustrating for a lot of the people who are very used to being in an office, you know, there's usually only 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, it's a relatively small office most of the time, and being able to be cordial and fun, or just lovely and helpful, and, you know, just, that's another thing, actually, being ready to anticipate what is happening and what's going on, and being able to act toward that is really helpful in casting. Very helpful. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot that people don't realize that goes into casting. It's not just sitting in an audition room. And I've talked about this on a few webinars, but I do like to hear, I like to hear, but I also think it's helpful for actors. As a casting director, what are some things that you really want actors to know about what you do, or what do you think that they don't understand or don't realize about what you do as a casting director, kind of going off of all of the organizational stuff that you were just talking about and all of the like technical stuff that you're responsible for? It's not just sitting in a Zoom room and watching people read sides.
Well, I personally want them to know that we are always rooting for them, because I think they don't think that we do, and they get so nervous when they come in and everything, and we are rooting for them to do well. We want them to do well. We don't want anybody to fail ever. Like our job is as easy as they make it, and vice versa. So like if we try to be nice, and if we aren't particularly nice that day, I don't know what happened, and I apologize. It's not fair, you know, but people, I guess, do have bad days. But we need you to do well, because we need this role cast. So when you come in, you know, always have that in your mind. So maybe you'll be a little less nervous about it, because you know we're on your side already when you walk in that room. And I'm sure that's like, duh, but I think a lot of people don't realize it, because you know, nobody wants you to fail in that room. There's not one casting director or casting associate or casting assistant in that room, or intern, or whoever the hell else is there that day, that wants you to fail. We want you to succeed. So we're on your side.
Would have been called in otherwise.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't have. Yeah, I don't know. Same. I think you hear that from time to time, but it's true. I mean, everyone's on your side, and I think casting directors are a lot more like actors than I think people realize. We try to go get jobs too, and we don't get them that we love, and
all the time.
We have to go meet with people, and you know, it's just like any other profession. I feel like there's this weird cultural thing around actors and casting directors that is not entirely accurate, in my opinion. You know, we're just people who are trying to do a job too, and trying to do our best at our job, and for the people who hire us, you know, and just you help us with that. You know, we're all kind of in this together. There's not this big wall that comes down between an actor and a casting director. Like, we're all trying to get to the same goal of hiring the best person for the job, you know. But yeah, also there's a lot of stuff that goes on with casting that people don't realize. Like, how do you think those auditions get up to have people view them? You have to have an assistant or an associate that puts them there and has to do hundreds of them. Who has to render all your self-tapes and upload that? Like who has to keep the list so we know
who's editing your demo reels? We're doing it. Your agents aren't doing it. We are doing it. We have to edit every demo reel for you.
Let's talk about demo reels from Unbelievable.
Oh my god, that was like
very much picking lots of clips and lots of clips for Unbelievable. I remember picking clips for Toni Collette like in the wee hours of the night.
Yeah,
because they send everything, and you know, Toni Collette's worked on everything. So, and then you have to tailor it. You tailor every project you work on. You tailor every demo reel to that project, every single one. So, like, you may have done the Unbelievable demo reel, but you're not going to use that one on like the comedy that you're going to do. So then you got to do that demo reel on the next thing you work on and all that, because there used to be a time when actors did have people do demo reels for them, but somehow we became the demo reel people. And I don't know when it happened. It was sometime in the last 20 years, because that's how long I've worked in this crap, and I know it. Because when I started in casting, I didn't have to do this. But now I honestly feel like I think we've all feel this way. Like we're pretty damn good at it now. Like we're really good at making demo reels. We make you guys look amazing.
Well, I think too, because a lot of times when people do a demo reel, for the most part, actually one thing that I think agents are starting to do is have full websites or whatever those, not like an actor's personal website, but like a website where they have a lot of their clips listed and you can like pick and choose, which is amazing. But the idea that a lot of times you're not necessarily trying to just educate your creative team on an actor's like full body of work. They want to see how your body of work portrays to this particular character a lot of the time. So if I'm showing them, like kind of Kate was saying, like a very broad comedy for something that's supposed to be like really gritty drama, even the person with the most creative and imaginative mind is going to be a little thrown off by that. You know, if that's all that you're showing them, like they might not be able to just see your potential to be able to be this like wipes down gritty person. So we want you to look your best. You know, if we know you can do it from just knowing your work, we're going to specify, like pull that one down, you know, put just the more drama, put, you know, or if there's nothing to show, that's when, you know, a lot of times we'll ask you to audition. You know, even if you have a body of work that's showing how good you are, you know, like sometimes you need to read anyway.
Yeah,
I think sorry,
go ahead.
I'm gonna say there have been a whole lot of times that we have found or have come up with ideas based on other people's demo reels of actors. I'm 99% sure we thought of Bridget Everett because we watched her on somebody else's clip. I was like, oh, Bridget Everett would be great for this. Lena Dunham, before she was famous, we cast in Mildred Pierce after seeing her in somebody else's demo reel. We didn't know who she was before that. You know, like there's definitely, there are those times when you see people in other people's things and you go, who's that?
And just to that note, as like a little wink, wink, if you're putting your reel together, if you have an option to not include a take where someone might be coming across as a little better or more noticeable than you are, maybe don't include that one if you have another option. Do you know what I mean? Because the goal is that you're the shining star in this clip, you know? And I know that a lot of people don't necessarily have an option. And if you have two lines opposite, I don't know, somebody awesome, Ryan Reynolds, he's awesome today. So like, you know, include that. But I just mean like, if you're just acting in a scene, maybe don't include that one. Because it draws our attention. And then I'm looking at this other girl or guy I'm not looking at you, you know, and
yeah. And a real, like a side note, just to go back to self-taping, because that reminds me of something. Choose your reader wisely. You know, it's not about the reader, it's about you. So if you get like an over enthusiastic reader or someone who's just so terrible that the timing, it messes with your timing, it's not going to help your self-tape. So just think about it and think about who is going to give you the best read. And it might be another actor, and hopefully that actor understands it's not their scene, it's your scene. You know, that's one of the things that I think is really important with self-tapes. I've gotten distracted so many times by the reader that I've actually a few times asked them to retape with a different reader. And I feel bad because sometimes it's their mom and I don't want to hurt their mom's feelings because I'm from the Midwest and I love moms and, you know, I just can't do it. But, you know, I want you to get the job. So let's just do a little quick retape there.
Yeah, I think we are at the end of our time, so we have to wrap up. But just a last kind of sentiment to hear that you were mentioning how Toni Collette didn't have to audition for Unbelievable for obvious reasons. I think a lot of people understand, but it's still a surprise to me, and I think it might be a surprise to other people that even with like, if you work in the industry, you've definitely seen her work and you know that she's very talented, but you still are putting together a demo reel for her of kind of like a like role so that the creatives can put her into that context. And I think that is interesting. And after starting out, I don't know, it would be encouraging to me if I were just starting out to know that even at that level, even after you've worked on a million projects, you know, their creatives still need the context for what kind of performance you can give.
Well, also with Tony, I'm sure like it's not necessarily that she's not amazing or incapable or anything like that, but sometimes people just need to be reminded, you know, or even just as a talking point, you know, if you're deciding between, you know, like just to have a fresh look-see.
Plus, you're talking about a ton of people who have to approve her, like that one role, like a ton of people. And out of that ton of people, there's always the one, you know, who's like, and then here it is, you know? So.
Yeah, that's another thing too. There are so many people in the approval process, especially in TV, but even in film too, it's a lot less so. But you've got your director, and your director may be obsessed with you. And then like one of the 8 producers isn't, and you know, and then that person needs convincing, and then depending on how well of a convincer that person is, they could turn that, like, and then the studio, and then the network, and then the, you know, there's so many people. So even if you have a lot of people on the creative team on your side, there's, you know, look, we're all just human, not everyone likes everyone, you know, and so you can just, again, just a testament to just doing the best you can and being okay with what you've done, and like hopefully it works out. But there's just so much more than you and what goes on that's not anything you could do differently or do at all, you know.
And that's part of casting also that people don't realize, is that we are sort of like this bridge between so many, where, you know, we have the producers and the directors and their creative vision, and then we have network and studio and what needs to happen from that level. And then there's the agents and the line producers for when we're doing deals, where we're, you know, trying to do what's best for the production and also do what's best for the actors. So there's definitely a lot of bridging that people don't realize about casting.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, we could sit here and talk for many hours about all the things you do, but I will let you go. Thank you so much to all 3 of you for taking the time to answer questions and enrich us with your expertise and your experience, and talk about the show, which again was amazing. If you have not seen Unbelievable, please go watch it. It will destroy you, but also will inspire you from an acting perspective. It's really great. And congratulations on your nomination. Thank you everyone for joining today. And stay healthy and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye, guys.
everyone. Bye.